it's very interesting because you'd imagine modern day having a parliament and, 13 members that you've elected to represent you in that place then say, no, sorry, we have to fight a war, and no one replaces them. That's the other thing. But also Parliament ran different back then. I mean, maybe they could do a Zoom call today from the front lines. I don't know. But yeah, it's such an interesting, different world back then. And also service to me and you probably means something more like Total War from the Second World War, where everyone serves. So there's that.
Yeah.
But service back then was being enlisted, but also not really having to fight in front lines and stuff like that. So still they might be serving overseas, but they're not really having to fight each other and kill people.
There was a sense of duty as well.
Oh, yeah,
100%. For the First World War at least. I saw in my notes Larkin enlisted within 10 days from the outbreak. Pretty much straight away. I did really want to bring this up because that was one of the stories I did take away from you from there that stuck with me. I did want to learn a bit more about their stories at some point, a bit more in the future. And with this being so close to Anzac Day, I feel like I wanted to have that opportunity to bring it up.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thanks for elaborating on that part of the story.
I might add last time since I've been there, there was a wonderful chamber attendant, which was my role at Parliament as well, chamber attendant / guide, Nathan Anderson. So he was basically taking up the mantle to look and research heavily into all the members who served. So he's an avid historian. He used to be a teacher, so he's done that level way higher than I could ever achieve. So he basically took up the mantle to do a lot of that research.
Yeah, cool. So Government House, I was fortunate enough to do, like I said, I've only done 2 of your tours. One of the Parliament House, one at Government House. Never got the one at Bridge Climb. I did this on Saturday.
Oh yes,
just passed. So time of this recording, that was 2 days ago. And I'd done one once before, as I mentioned earlier, and was an incredible experience. Learned a hell of a lot of stuff. Which are a few questions I relayed onto you this time around. I can't remember what those questions were. Ask a lot of questions.
That's right.
But walking through it for a second time, even though I was with you and I know you, there was still that sense of imposter syndrome, like I didn't belong there. But it was good being with people who had no idea, and the awe factor going through these rooms and the detail came back to me of what each kind of room described, the floors, the patterns, the tiles and the ceilings, everything around there, which I tell on my tours. When I see Government House, I mention for people to go there and do these tours. The attention to detail tells a story in itself. I remember, you didn't mention this, but another one mentioned there was a rug, I think in the
dining room?
Not the dining room, the room next to it.
The drawing room.
The drawing room.
Yeah.
Was it the drawing room or the one after that?
Okay. Yep.
The ballroom before the ballroom.
Drawing room.
The drawing room.
Yeah, because there's the ante-drawing.
The drawing, not the ante-drawing, the drawing room. There was a rug on the floor, which could have been the same one, and they commissioned this artist from, I think it was Sri Lanka, you can correct me if I'm on this one, who commissioned this to represent and pay tribute to the bushfires of 2019 for the people who'd lost their homes, the devastation that came with it. I can't remember if it was the same carpet or the same rug.
It would have been. So that was Jenny Jones, and she's from Western Australia.
Oh,
not as far as maybe she has Sri Lankan ancestry. I'm not too sure.
She could do.
Yeah, but so Jenny Jones is the artist who was commissioned to do the rugs because the rugs needed to be done anyway.
Yeah.
But she took it was kind of combined governor and artist to basically pay tribute to the bushfires. So the carpets in the 2 drawing rooms, so the ante and the main drawing room, are bottlebrush and banksia. So they're cousin plants. They're very native. So the colorings and everything like that are very subdued, as much of a Australian floral sort of stuff is. It's very sort of salt bushy and bluey and greeny, but not too vibrant, which actually really nicely adds to the feel, because otherwise it's very garish. It's very in-your-face colours if it was sort of European or floral or anything like that. Now, they're very interesting to choose a bottlebrush and a banksia, mainly because how does that tribute to the bushfires? Well, even though there was all this massive tragedy all up and down the East Coast and part of Western Australia, we were all on fire and lost hectares and hectares of land, they're 2 plants that actually need fire to germinate. So to bring new life into everything, you needed fire. So devastating and, destructive force of fire, but it still brought this new life, and it's quite a nice little linkage to that. But I also want to add a little bit of history with that as well. To my knowledge, we're not too sure, as in historians and biologists and all that sort of stuff, they might be figured out now, I don't know. But my understanding is that we actually don't know if it's a human intervention from the people living here for 60,000 years and conditioned the plants to actually germinate due to fire, because that's how they used to clear land, rejuvenate everything by fire sticks and fire farming and stuff like that. But or they figured out that the plants actually rejuvenate really quickly after fire.
Okay.
So, to my knowledge, we haven't figured out the actual answer to that.
Yeah, right.
But either way, it's fantastic to think about. It's like, it's either human intervention is created, as we always do, evolved stuff around us to suit our needs, or we were clever enough to figure it out. So that's always cool for early Australian history.
Yeah.
For that. Yeah, so having that in Government House especially is quite cool. Those rods also were commissioned, what are the last pieces of the house, I believe, quote me on this, but to be commissioned under the late Majesty. So they have on each corner, there's a crown, and that was the heraldry of the Queen, so the St. Edward's crowns. Yeah. That's the last pieces there. So that even in itself is quite historically significant for the house and its collection. So yeah, pretty cool. So nice that you thought of the carpet. Yeah. It's so much in there that you can.
There's so much in there.
Details out of.
That's the point I was trying. I don't want you to go. We'll get into your story in a second, but I don't want to go into everything about that, because I want this still to be like your tour when people come on do things. But these are the things that I've noticed and I've been told about before, and I wanted to bring this up with you in front of the other people, but I was like, I'll hold off on it, just in case they have their own questions, which they didn't, which is fine. Yeah. There was one couple that had a lot of questions at the end.
Great.
They were really good. Sometimes,
sadly, seems to be the case with a lot of the tours that I've experienced, especially at Parliament and Government House, is that literally when you have no more time at the end, you have to move on to whatever you have to do. They're like, here's all these questions. These are great questions. I wish you asked them during the tour, because I could have answered them properly. Yeah. So, well, it
is what it is. Well, we're coming to a close with part 1 of the series, but we're going to go on to part 2 in a second. So just for everyone at home who's listened to this and are getting ready for part 2, what are we going to go into? What is your story that you like talking about?
So my favourite story involves 3 places that have been a guide, of course. So we know Government House, Parliament House and Bridge Client. It involves the struggles of the Great Depression, fascism, Nazism, revolution, and a federal and state money clash.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so the story is the turbulent Lang government and the subsequent dismissal.
Alrighty, guys. So this is where we wrap up part 1 of the series, which I know we haven't really covered Jack Lang, though we have covered a lot about Government House, Parliament House, and ourselves. However, it's time for some more Matt Lange as we move to the next location to get into part 2 of the series and for the story of the rise and fall of Premier Jack Lang. So don't go anywhere. The music was composed by Scott Aird and the logo designed by Melinda Bebb. Please tell your mates, and if you are a tour guide or know of one, please reach out to me in my email, which will be mentioned below, and I'll see you at the next spot. Uru. The big fella, Jack Lang, Premier of New South Wales and the state leader for the ALP during the 1920s and 30s. He was considered a champion of the working class that prioritised its citizens first and the federal government last. Strong-willed and stubborn, and the refusal to back down from what he believed in led him onto a path that would bring Australia to the brink of civil war. But what would lead a man and a country to this? Alrighty, everyone. G'day and welcome back to A Tour Guide's Tour of Australia, Episode 3, Part 2. In the first part, we got to meet the incredible, the amazing, the legendary Matthew Lange, and we got to hear about his fascinating path to becoming a tour guide with a vast array of stories that was covered as well. But now it's time to get into the guts of his favourite stories. So, Matthew.
So my favourite story involves 3 places that have been a guide, of course. So we know Government House, Parliament House and Bridge Climb. It involves the struggles of the Great Depression, fascism, Nazism, revolution, and a federal and state money clash.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so the story is the turbulent Lang government and the subsequent dismissal. So it's sort of known in a lot of common psyche of Australians, but also not a very well told story. So I'm always really eager to talk about it. So over the course of the last 3 places that I've worked as a guide, they've always, well, depending on sort of the time constraints or the ability or the interest of the groups, it's always had to be a bit abridged. But nonetheless, today at least, I'm going to tell the whole story that I've always been able to, never really got the chance to say. So
that's the thing, we're so not time poor, there's such time constraints that we can't, as much as we want to, fill in as much of the story as we can. Obviously with Bridge Climb, there's timings to get through to make sure everyone's having a good time and you get to see all aspects of the bridge, but there's other groups that have to come through behind, especially with Government House and Parliament. There's other things going around that you can't quite get into these things. Where I've offered a few times to go to the pub, be like, look, I'm knocking off now, can we go to the pub? I'll give you the full story when we get there. I've done that a couple of times. Some people pull me up on it and I'll take you up on your offer, and others just I'll wait there and like, oh, they're not coming. It's all good.
Yeah.
But this is the perfect opportunity to get into the full story.
Absolutely. Touching on that though, I definitely do not have the courage to talk to anyone I've had on a tour afterwards to be like, hey, want to spend more time with me this time without you having to oblige yourself. So yeah, I wish I could, but I don't have that courage. But also I feel like I'm a bit similar to you and Jesse in the sense that I use stories to sort of shield myself, because I could never really, especially Bridge Climb when you have almost 3 hours with them, couldn't really talk to each other like, oh, hey, how's it going? I think Jesse said, oh, you're an accountant? Great. I can't do that either. I was like, oh, okay, here's this story. Debuff from me. Like, I'm not interesting. Maybe you're interesting, but we're not here for that. No. Yeah. And for me personally, a lot of these stories, especially with Jack Lang, is to tell the stories that will hopefully be remembering them properly and living that history as well. So that's why I always like that. Stories. Yeah.
So the floor is yours. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you.